So, I mean, it was interesting because, I mean, Uber was the first platform in the world. There were no Voi and nothing. So, we really had to find like ways of managing our platform. But basically, when we entered the city, we of course did a lot of research. For example, we launched Malmö or New York City. It didn't really matter. We went in to look at, for us, it was very important with the supply level. So how many taxi drivers is it in a city, basically, and how many would like to drive taxi. And then we looked at Uber. We people don't know this, but our strategy was to own the weekend trips. So Thursday trips to Sunday trips. That was like how we went to market. So the other way we looked at was the nightlife, like how many people ride taxis during the weekends. There was a lot of nightclubs, etc. And with that, we saw if it were demand for our products. So I think in the pre-launch, we worked a lot with finding our top 20, 30 drivers that really had like high class, was really good. So it was very nitty gritty. Like people went down to the cities, like just went with the other taxi companies and just find the best ones, basically. And then we incentivized them. So we gave them a lot of money to be live on the platform from the launch and 2-3 months afterwards. So they made a lot of money, even though, if we didn't have any customers, they still make their money. And then on the other hand, when we're going to launch, we worked a lot with getting the demand. So partnership with nightclubs, or, when we didn't have a lot of money, that's how we had to do it, or working with influencers, etc. Try to, make our platform work, basically. And then after 3-4 months, when we had a lot of demand for our product, we can then drop the incentives and the drivers will make money from the platform. And basically after our launch, I think we had around 6 months after launch to make a city work with partnerships, campaigns, and incentives for riders and drivers, basically. For us, it was around like 3 months before we started working on a city launch or a new product launch. And then it was usually around 6 months after launch that we had to make it work. But I mean, in some cases, the launch can actually be 1 year. So I think when people think about launch, they usually think about the day you launch, and maybe like 3 days afterwards. But the launch is actually so much longer, and you need to have a post plan and etc. So for us, a launch was until you like it worked, like the platform supply and demand match each other. So it always started with, after we did our research and saw like, okay, this is an interesting city to launch in. The first step was to KPI was then to always start with 5 to 10 drivers in a city like below 1 million people, and to get them onboarded, educated, trained, etc. So the first KPI was always to make the first, if London maybe was 50 or 60 or 70, to make them that the platform could support them with the cash from the demand. That was like step one. Maybe we need to bring in 200 riders every weekend in order to make this 70, make good cash of Uber. But then, of course, we had a metric since we launched new cities every week, basically around the world. We could kind of figure out quite quickly, how many trips a month we should do in the city. So then it was, of course, to get the platform launched, and then of course get as many riders in as possible. But we always had a target based on the research we have done. So for example, in a city like Gothenburg, then maybe we had a target of 5,000 riders a week should go into the platform, because we also know that not every one of this will ride every week. But then we could track it backwards down and know how many we need to get on the platform in order to support the drivers, because the drivers is Uber's customers, the riders is our secondary customer. The most important one is the driver, because if they don't make money, we don't make money, and the other way around, basically. So you looked at so many things. I mean, if you take a city like Copenhagen, for example, I mean, population-wise, it's if you just look at it, you don't know anything around it. It should be as good city as Stockholm to launch. Like you have very high margins, like it's expensive to drive a taxi in both cities. But then if you look at the infrastructure and the climate in the city, it's so different. Like you have, you know, a majority of people ride bikes every day. I think it's like 34% or something. And that's actually the same as in Malmö. So Malmö very, very much from Gothenburg and Stockholm. And then, you know, the market goes down and basically fights. In the beginning, then taxi was tax against bicycles. And in that case, Copenhagen was maybe the same size of market as, you know, a city like Gothenburg, even though it's half the size. Yes, I think in our case it was that's I think is fun. Like when I think from outside, you know, people look at Uber or Spotify and all those as like they have some data that, you know, other people don't have. But most of the time it was so much scrappy. Like we went into, you know, if we try to figure out, for example, how many trips, you know, a specific, you know, weekend is in Malmö for the tax companies, then we maybe had to do like top down, down up approach, where maybe, you know, try to figure out how many taxis they had outside the central station, and try to, you know, back and do some estimate about how many cars they had live that weekend. I mean, if we look back at it, I think we said in our team like we've done more failures than success. But but I think how we basically thought about it was to always try things small. So we never went like, if we had like, you know, 200,000 SEK, we never went full on an influencer campaign. We always tried it small and then we added more. So we did like a lot of failures, but maybe not, you know, they didn't cost us that much. But I think from, like I told you in the beginning, so we focus a lot on weekend riders and young people, and we saw, you know, like how can we make more money Monday to Friday, you know, when it's more business riders, etc. And one way that was, you know, people would like to have a business product, so Uber for Business. You would like to integrate it with your invoicing, and then we said like, let's try to launch this in Europe. But I think in Europe, you know, we have so many different countries with different rules and different customers and etc. So it's very complex. But anyway, I handled the launch here in Europe, and we had like a great, you know, Uber is a great product, but back end nothing was basically set. But we said like, let's try to launch this product. So we onboarded all these like huge Swedish companies. I can't mention names, but we're very big, and they were super excited to integrate Uber. They had their own personal experience. But then in the end, we had to send manual invoices ourselves and collect all the data in Excel. You know, and if you do that for like, you know, companies with 10,000 employees, it's quite heavy manual work. We, you know, of course, they start doing trips to make money out of it, but the process was like impossible to handle. And since we are a small country, and business was not like the highest priority on the agenda for the San Francisco developers, we couldn't get any help. And of course, that whole product failed because, I mean, we sold more than we can handle, and we didn't have this, you know, built-in process. So that was really tough. And I mean, a big learning from that is that, you know, it's good to launch things that is 80% done, but in this case, we launched something that was 20% done. But the fun fact with it is that you never know if it's a failure or not. So for us personally, it was a big failure and a lot of money and time invested into it, and also the reputation of the company. But then we playbooked this, so we collected all the information around this failure, which was not fun to sit and spend 2 weeks writing about your failure and upload it into our Uber network. But then actually when I left the company, they had looked at this you know, report and actually launched Uber for Business, and it was really successful. And I think they, with us launching the product, the market, you know, teached us around a lot of things that we had to improve with the product. So the learning there was a failure for me, but I mean, for the company, it was really good that we did it, because in the long run, we could launch even better products. So you never know in the long term if it's a failure or not. So, I mean, we were just a few cities when I started, and we had this approach from the beginning that was like, with everything we do, like marketing campaign, launch of a city, building a new tool, the project is not finished when you're done, with the project or the launch. It's done when you're done the reporting of that project, the playbook. So in everything we did, even though we failed, we had to invest 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 week in order to write a report on what went good, what went wrong, and what did we learn about it, and then upload it into a system. So, for example, if I thought about idea maybe doing, Uber puppies on demand or something stupid idea, I could search for this and then maybe find that someone else in the world has thought about the same thing or tried it in small scale. So then I can look at that and maybe build on his idea, or maybe not do the same, failure as he did. So, and that, of course, with every new city we launched, the next city would look at the latest one that has collected information from maybe 6 cities. And then you go up to the launch 700 cities. So then the 600, the 700 city looked at the 699 city that looked, like sort of collect the information from the, the ones before them. So then like the process becomes so effective, like you can do it in your sleep, like everybody know, you don't need to think. So there's like 700 different cities has learned things about how to launch a city, and that is very unique. And I think that's something rarely see in Swedish companies, that you also invest time in uploading and the reporting of even the failures.